Let me tell you about American Financing. Please get your home refinanced. Save money now. Save money. You don't have any idea, I think, what's coming. Most Americans don't. You know, the stock market is going up. Why? The country is on fire. How could the stock market possibly be going up? Because of the coronavirus? We're opening up New York again? Oh, that makes a lot of sense. Anyway, please get your finances in order and make a 10-minute phone call to AmericanFinancing.net. If you have a mortgage and you're paying over 4% or 4%, you can reduce your mortgage payment and save money. If you have high-interest credit cards, fold those into your mortgage and pay them off. You'll be able to pay them off because you're paying about 15 to 21% in interest now on those credit cards. That's never going to get paid off. Do it at 4% or less and pay them off. AmericanFinancing.net. Call them now.
What you're about to hear is the fusion of entertainment and enlightenment. This is the Glenn Beck Program.
Hello, America, and welcome to the program. What a great show for you today. I'm so excited. We have the Wheel of Termination that is coming, and we're going to spin it a little later on. We're going to find out who needs to be terminated, who needs to be shunned, who needs to be driven out because they're a witch without any trial or anything else. Well, I mean, we might put them on a stick and then dunk them underwater to see if they float. And if they do, we know we have to kill them. But the cancer culture is it's really just starting to get great. Black police officers have been fired without investigation for using non-lethal tasers during a protest. Nurse has been fired for calling looters thugs on Facebook. Glad we got her out of there. Catholic high school teacher fired for denouncing the narrative. Southern Baptist has been fired after getting dragged online for citing the Bible. Man fired for posting video of citizens protecting the businesses. Actor has been fired for tweets that existed when he was hired. An elementary school teacher forced to resign for writing about protest on Facebook. Another Catholic high school teacher has been fired for post about race. And the Bon Appetit editor has been forced out for a photo they just found of him in 2013 dressed as a Puerto Rican stereotype. Oh, man. Whew. Well, we got those done yesterday. Who can we terminate today? Oh, and we need to look to our leaders because they know everything about dressing up as a stereotype or appropriating culture. We go to Nancy Pelosi and the kneeling yesterday in 1 minute.
This is the Glenn Beck Program.
Wow, you know what's so weird is it is the Glenn Beck Program, too, that you're listening to. And I'm Glenn Beck. What are the odds? Let me talk to you a little bit about Car Shield. When the subject of car repair comes up, I immediately go find something else to do. Immediately. Change topics. I don't know the first thing about car repair other than it's really expensive, especially if the car in question has fallen out of warranty. And that's when they get you. When it comes to safeguarding your car against disasters that may come your way, your best bet is Car Shield. They have a customizable monthly plan with rates as low as $99 a month. You can choose your favorite mechanic or dealership to do the work, and Car Shield will take care of the rest. They also offer 24/7 roadside assistance and a rental car while yours is being fixed for free. Car Shield has helped over 1 million customers. With rates as low as $99 a month, you have nothing to lose. So get covered by Car Shield today. 800-CAR-6000. 800-CAR-6000. And mention the promo code BECK or visit carshield.com and use the promo code BECK to save 10%. That's carshield.com, code BECK. A deductible may apply. Minnesota is shutting down the police force. That is so great. They don't know exactly what they're going to do yet, but this is fantastic. What a great move forward. Seattle police sources now confirm that preparations are underway to abandon the East Precinct. They're taking items of value out, guns. They're also shredding documents of anything that they have in there. They say they're not going to give it up, but they're not going to just hand it over. But they're moving the trucks in to get everything out of there. So in case they have to. Meanwhile, a Black Lives Matter leader in New York City says they are now training and being trained by former members of special forces, and they are now ready to mobilize a paramilitary force to stop police brutality on the streets. That is fantastic. Finally, some justice. We get some Black Panthers, Black Lives Matter guys on the streets with guns. Oh, it's going to be fixed. I'm so excited about this. Stu, is it just me, or is there a part of you that says, I'm going to get a bowl of popcorn and just watch?
Oh, it would be fascinating to take in. I could tell you this. Yeah. There wouldn't be another minute I would show up on the job if I was a Minneapolis police officer. I wouldn't even consider
can I tell you something?
Showing up. And that's because I'm a terrible person.
Until I had my family out, I would show up for work. But then, I have to tell you, I don't know why. And tomorrow, I think I want to do a show just with police officers, just all police officers. I want to hear from you. That'll be tomorrow. We're trying to get some leadership on from the police departments around. So if you have police unions or anybody else that you think we should talk to, you let us know. Tweet us. But I've been thinking about. There's no way I would show up for any of this stuff. They're like, oh, you don't like it? And I would do everything I could to walk out en masse. I'd be like, okay, all right. You know what? You don't want us. You want to defund us. We're all getting fired anyway, guys. We're going on strike. We're leaving. We don't need this. And I would just leave. Let's go ahead. Show people what it's like without police officers. It's insanity. It's insanity.
Yeah, it really, really is. And I keep thinking to myself, so what do they want to happen here? Are they arguing for a well-regulated militia? Is that what they're arguing for?
Yeah, that's basically what they're doing.
Because it would be interesting.
Yeah, Black Lives.
You could actually theoretically attempt this, right? If you had a Second Amendment that you stood behind. But now they've taken the guns away and now the police away from the people most likely to be murdered in cities. The ones they're sitting here complaining about it, and then they're taking away everybody's ability to defend themselves or have someone else defend them. So now they're in this position with no possibility of fighting back against a criminal element. How does that work out? Not well.
Well, we've done some investigation and we've done some work yesterday on the events of the weekend and events of the day. And I want you to know 2020 is the year of who the hell knows where this all started or where it's going, but sure looks like it's out of hand. Which is kind of harder to deal with the New York Times opinion section. Which for some reason has completely imploded now, and you're not getting any perspective. Did you listen to the New York Times Daily today?
No, I didn't.
It was. You have to. It's fun. It's fun. I'm listening to it. I'm like, these people are all insane. They're insane. They're talking about defunding the police and what's next, and they're talking about it as if it's logical. Okay. Has this been tried anywhere? Have you done this anywhere? We're going to just try this out on major U.S. cities? Doesn't sound like a good idea, but whatever. So the New York Times, they've just gone off the rails. The sane voices at the New York Times is the renegade centrist Barry Weiss, who said this on Twitter about the drama inside the New York Times. The civil war inside the New York Times between the mostly young wokes and the mostly 40-plus liberals is the same one raging inside other publications and companies across the country. The dynamic is always the same. Hang on just a second. So the 20-some wokes and the 40-plus liberals, where are the conservative... Oh, I forgot I was talking about the New York Times. Anyway, so they're in civil war now. So what caused this rupture? Well, it was a op-ed piece in the New York Times. Was it the op-ed that was titled "My New Vagina Won't Make Me Happy"? No. Or how about pedophilia is a disorder, not a crime? Or this one about transgenderism at airports, in which the author accuses the TSA of transphobia. Or was it the op-ed that wants to know, why is Europe so Islamophobic? Or any of the, radical op-eds about gun control, like, this is one of my favorites, the iconic man with a gun is a white man. I like that one because it takes gun control and it links guns to racism, which I always love, but it's not my favorite. My favorite may be the glowing birthday letter to Karl Marx that the New York Times put out on their op-ed page. So it wasn't any of those. Nicole Hannah-Jones, perhaps best known as the Spike Lee of journalism, whose special attention to reinventing American history, stormed Twitter to say, I'll probably get in trouble for this, but to not say something would be immoral. As a black woman, as a journalist, as an American, I'm deeply ashamed that we ran this op-ed. Oh, which one was it? By the way, Nicole Hannah-Jones, she won the Pulitzer Prize for the 1619 Project. Oh. And I have to tell you, if I had known all you had to do was get a Pulitzer Prize was to write, Black Panther as a racist historic account of America. And I would have lied my way to journalistic privilege years ago. Who knew it was that easy? Also, Jasmine Hughes, the author of such riveting stories as 8 Forgettable Things You Can Learn from Cardi B at Lunch, or White People Are Co-opting Black People's Jokes About White People. Well, yesterday, Jasmine said, as if it weren't already hard enough to be a black employee of the New York Times. I know. I can hear listen. Shh. Can you hear it? Yes. I can hear the cracks of the whips from the editors of the New York Times on the backs of all of their employees. All of their black employees. I didn't mean to assume that they would whip their white employees. What a sweatshop, slave shop, and racist place that is. Anyway, she's thrown down on Twitter, and I'm just not even going to. Because it kind of makes you gag. It does a little bit when you're. Then, of course, we have Sarah Zhang, the editor for the opinion section. She's got wonderful racist tweets. She was very upset that they ran this New York Times op-ed. New York Times writer Kyle Buchanan tweeted, "Running this op-ed puts blacks at the New York Times staff in danger. And it's dumb." Wow. Actually, he used an F word, too, but I can't pronounce it because it seems pretty intellectual when he uses it. So what is the article? We told you about it yesterday. Was it the article, "Can my children be friends with white people?" No, that was not racist. Or Mary Poppins and a nanny's shameful flirting with blackface, which blasts fictional characters about blackface, but, don't have a single word about Justin Trudeau's public blackface fetish. It doesn't say anything. Could it be, I shouldn't have to tell you this is racist, a guide on discerning racist microaggressions? Or social distancing is a privilege, in which the author blames white people for the fact that COVID-19 is disproportionately fatal to blacks? Or the New York Times op-ed, and the Oscar goes to white people. Or this one from the editorial board itself. Why does the U.S. military celebrate white supremacy, which actually tries to argue that the military celebrates white supremacy? Or this one about prejudicial car loans. New cars, old racism. Wow. This one, racism is real, and Trump helps show it. Or maybe this one, guns and racism, about white supremacy in the gun lobby. Or this one, Confederate flags and institutional racism. with a new creative definition of racism. Let me quote, "Furthermore, institutional racism doesn't require the enlisting of individual racists. The machine does the discriminating. It provides a space between the unpleasantness of racial discrimination and indeed hatred and the ultimate, undeniable, and for some desirable outcome of structural oppression." Wow. So which one was so dangerous and so crazy that they couldn't print, that they had to apologize for, get rid of one of their editors? Well, our next guest is going to be talking about, and I even say it, I could be on the wheel of termination today. Today could be my last show. Oh, please do me a favor. The New York Times, it was actually not about race, what they did. It was an op-ed penned by Senator Tom Cotton. Not about race. Stu, what is the stereotypical thing slaves picked in slave days?
Oh my gosh, it's his last name.
His last name! Mm-hmm. Is that crazy? I mean, how do you not see that one? Anyway, he wrote the op-ed, "Send in the Troops." Senator Cotton wrote, "Not surprisingly, public opinion is on the side of law enforcement and law and order, not insurrectionalists. According to a recent poll, 58% of registered voters, including nearly half of Democrats, 37% of African Americans, would support cities calling in the military to address the protests and demonstrations that are in response to the death of George Floyd. That opinion may not appear often in chic salons, but widespread support for this fact nonetheless. The American people are not blind to injustices in our society, but they know the basic responsibility of government is to maintain public order and safety." Oh, the New York Times had to come out and immediately apologize. The editor's note was, I think, as long as the editorial. It didn't really say much, but I just want to give you highlights of it. After publication, this essay met strong criticism from many readers and many Times colleagues, prompting editors to review the piece and editing process. Based on our review, we've concluded that the essay fell short of our standards and should not have been published. Beyond the factual questions that were in there, the tone of the essay in places was needlessly harsh and falls short of the thoughtful approach that advances useful debate. Oh, okay. So more like the op-ed, my children can be friends with white people. It's actually a question. I don't know if they actually solved that one. Or my new vagina won't make me happy. Or the birthday letter to Karl Marx. Something more based in reality, truth, and not offensive. Okay. I think I have it. Now, besides the Republicans are racist and conservatives are too dumb to tell the truth from lies, the main critique that the New York Times activist journalist had about his article was that op-eds have a duty to truth behind the ideology. Oh. Okay. All right. So we have a duty to truth. So what about the op-eds that have appeared in the New York Times in response to George Floyd's protests? Despite the previous hysteria about people staying indoors because of lockdown measures, in America, protest is patriotic. Now, this one was posted by the editorial board on June 2nd as dozens of American cities burned down. Just for the hell of it. What did the New York Times have to say about the anti-lockdown protests just a month earlier? The Right Sends in the Quacks by Paul Krugman. Or this one, The Coronavirus and Conservative Mind, which paints conservatives as unhinged conspiracy theorists who blame COVID-19 on Hillary Clinton, which I hadn't heard and didn't think of, but that'd be kind of fun to noodle today. I could go on and on and on, but I don't need to, because Tom Cotton is coming up in just a few minutes. Oh, yeah. So the April 15th tax filing deadline got pushed back to July 15th. Yay! Yay! Man, I feel good about paying my taxes right now. Don't you? I feel so charitable. Also, this time that we've had, this extra time, gives cyber criminals additional time to mine for your data. A few years ago, 2016, the people who were doing, cybercrime used false identities to steal at least $1.68 billion in tax revenue. And who says the government doesn't know how to manage its funds? Man. So that was 2016. Imagine what they can do now while we're all online and zoom into each other. No one can prevent all identity theft or monitor all transactions at all businesses, but LifeLock can see the threats that you might miss on your own. So join now. Save up to 25% off your first year by using the promo code BECK. Call 1-800-LifeLock or head over to LifeLock.com. Use the promo code BECK for 25% off. That's LifeLock.com. 1-800-LifeLock. Use the promo code BECK. We break now for 10 seconds. Station ID. Catch our breath. Wow. My name is Hawk Newsom. Hawk Newsom. He's the chairman of Black Lives Matter Greater New York. I love to have this guy on. He is very intimidating, apparently. His Black Rights group is now, according to him, mobilizing its base and aims to develop a highly trained military arm to challenge police brutality head on. Now, he just did an exclusive interview with somebody, I don't even know who. I think the Daily Mail. And they say that Black Lives Movement has marched for years to wake people up to the realities of police brutality and oppression. And he believes that people have finally awoken. And it's our obligation, it's our duty to provide people with a pathway forward. We want liberation. We want the power to determine our own destiny. You don't have that in America, huh? We want freedom from an oppressive government, and we want the immediate end of government-sanctioned murder by the police. And we prepare to stop these government-sanctioned murders by any means necessary. That's why we are preparing and training our people to defend our communities. So he's about to escalate the battle, which, again, with a mayor like Bill de Blasio, I think you're going to be fine, New York. No, I know. Call me crazy. An uprising, riots in the street, 1968. Glenn Beck knows nothing.
This is the Glenn Beck Program.
Aren't you glad you knew in advance what was coming? By the way, in the next couple of days, I'm going to tell you what is the next shoe to fall. We'll do that coming up. These days, it seems like half the things are Wi-Fi capable or Bluetooth connected or both. It's not just the phones and tablets anymore. Your television, your refrigerator, even the little robot vacuum cleaner, all interconnect using the internet. And that, of course, makes them, and therefore you, extremely vulnerable to cyber attacks. That electric cheese grater your kids are probably getting you for Father's Day. Man, that's great, kids, because I've been so tired grating that cheese just by hand. Norton 360 will help you stay more private and more secure in today's connected world, and it's getting more important. You're getting real-time protection against existing and emerging threats to your information with a VPN operating on bank-grade encryption, a password manager that easily and securely creates, stores, and manages passwords. Wow. I wonder if anybody from Black Lives Matter might try to steal money because they earned it. They earned it. Make sure you get Norton 360, a powerful ally. Norton.com/Beck. Save 50%. Norton.com/Beck.
Go to blazetv.com/Glenn. Use the promo code Glenn. Get $10 off your subscription. For Glenn Beck, Stu Does America, Pat Gray Unleashed, and more.
This is the Glenn Beck Program. I cannot believe we have this guy on just based on his last name. Cotton. What does that make you think of? You think... Anyway, we have Senator Tom Cotton on with us now, who has said just things that should not be said at the New York Times. Things that, I think most people agree with. But you can't say those things anymore. Senator, welcome. How are you?
Hey, Glenn. Good to be on with you.
So, Senator, I have to tell you, the world has gone insane. the left, the media. I heard the New York Times today talking about how having a serious conversation with somebody about, well, so what happens when you get rid of the police in Minnesota? Well, we don't know exactly yet, but we're going to work it out, and it's going to be great. I mean, we're talking about major U.S. cities just saying, I'm done with the police. This is nuts.
Yeah. Glenn, this is what happens when you have a newsroom like the New York Times apparently does, or a city like Minneapolis and its mayor that are run by people who think the real world is a social justice seminar on a college campus.
Right.
I can tell you what
exactly
happens.
Right.
I can tell you what happens when you don't have the police. You have anarchy. I mean, you literally have anarchy because there is no common authority to both enforce the law and be constrained by the law. That's what will happen in Minnesota or in some of these other major cities where the Democratic mayors and city councils are talking about slashing police budgets like in Los Angeles and New York. The police are what stand between civilization and anarchy. And we need police departments that are well-funded, well-resourced, well-trained.
Senator, I cannot believe, wait a minute, I cannot believe we're having this conversation. You don't have to tell me or anybody in this audience. I'm just listening to you saying, police departments are important. Or, of course they are. Of course they are. I just can't believe that we are here at this point.
Go
ahead.
Look, Glenn, at what happened with the New York Times. So, as you said, the New York Times is in total meltdown, and it has suffered an internal collapse because its senior leaders decided to publish an opinion from a Republican senator that is shared by 58% of the American people. But apparently they view that as beyond the pale in the woke newsroom. Now, I would say that the senior leaders cravenly surrendered to the woke mob at the New York Times because on Wednesday of last week they published my op-ed. On Thursday they publicly defended it. On Friday they renounced it after the mob demanded that, and then on Sunday the owner of the New York Times fired the editorial page editor. I would say that he surrendered to the woke mob, but let's remember this guy is a woke child himself.
I know he is. They're eating their own. Yeah. I mean, Senator, a lot of people are getting very upset right now. A lot of people on the right, they're getting upset and they're like, this has got to stop. I'm actually ready to grab a bowl of popcorn. I'm interested in just watching them just devour themselves. It's phenomenal what is happening. And I don't think that there is, watching Nancy Pelosi do the stunt she did yesterday is hysterical. I mean,
yeah,
hysterical.
So, Glenn, the New York Times is making a fool of themselves, from A.G. Sulzberger all the way down to their young interns who were demanding heads on pikes because their editorial page editor had the audacity to publish an opinion with which they disagreed, although 58% of Americans agreed with it. And people are laughing at them. Reporters from other newspapers, producers from television shows, or even reporters at the New York Times recognize that the New York Times has become a laughingstock and exposed itself for what it is, a far left-wing propaganda outfit.
It couldn't happen to a nicer bunch of people. So one of the things they had a problem with...
Glenn, look at the replacement of the editorial page editor. Just take a look at her Twitter feed. But in the meantime, look at the note she sent out to her workers just a couple days ago. She said that if you see anything at all, anything that offends you or that concerns you, then just send me a text or an email right away. I mean, she is telling grown-ups, people who should recognize they're not in a college campus, they're not in a social justice seminar, that they get trigger warnings at work. So they're not offended by microaggressions. I mean, this really is the language of campus children brought to the workforce when grown-ups should be able to say, look, you're not in a social justice seminar anymore. You are in the real world. And when you're confronted with an opinion with which you disagree, the proper answer is to refute it with better arguments in return. It's not to curl up in the fetal position, demand trigger warnings, and say that the bad people that publish this opinion should be fired. And if you don't like it, you can quit.
So tell me, they said that one of the problems is they had a real problem with your depiction, which was completely inaccurate, of the role of Antifa in the protests. Tom. Do you have any evidence at all that Antifa is playing any role in this?
Well, I'll just say the Attorney General has repeatedly pointed this out, and I don't know many peaceful protesters and demonstrators who take crowbars with them to marches. I don't think stacks of bricks get into the street by themselves, Glenn. Of course, there were agitators and extremists who hijacked and infiltrated protected First Amendment protests for their own purposes. That was happening the weekend after last, and that's why you saw so much violence on the streets in places like Minneapolis and New York and Washington, D.C. Now, since the president demanded that the National Guard be on the scene in Washington, D.C., employed a lot of the specialized law enforcement units that are present around the seat of our national government. Since some Democratic governors, like Tim Walz in Minnesota, recognized that he had no choice but to call out the National Guard, that violence diminished significantly over the course of last week, to the point where over this past weekend, it was almost all just protests and demonstrations. And that's because those agitators and extremists realized that the authorities were now onto their techniques and that they faced the risk of pushback from the police and ultimately arrest and charges.
So I saw an interview with Attorney General Barr, and he said they asked him, why haven't you made a single arrest yet of Antifa if you know that they were involved? And he said something pretty shocking, at least to me. He said, because we're tracking their funding. They're very well funded right now. He's not going after the guys on the streets. He's going after the leadership. He's going after most likely, the white, anti-capitalist socialists around the world that have tons of money that are funding these things. That's going to be a bombshell if he hits that. Because there will be all kinds of connections to people we know.
That's Glenn. That's the right way to approach a radical organization like Antifa. I'll say that. I don't want to get too far into the details of what may or may not be investigated and what techniques our federal government is using, but there's a long history of our federal government trying to identify informants within criminal organizations and conspiracies, to roll them up and end up not just getting the foot soldiers out on the street, but all the way up to the kingpins and the funders. That was how a U.S. grant took down the original version of the KKK in the 1870s. Mm-hmm. That's how we took down the mob in the 50s and 60s and 70s, drug gangs in the 80s and 90s, terrorist organizations over the last 20 years. The federal government has a long record of rolling up large organizations through careful investigative work and the use of informants and intelligence, and that's what we should be doing with Antifa right now. So,
Senator, if you see how the Soviet Union after World War II flipped Czechoslovakia and Hungary and everything else, they did it without a shot being fired. And it really is the bottom-up, top-down, inside-out thing. You put communists in the government, in a deep state, if you will. Then you fund and you support rioters on the streets. The people rise up and say the government's got to do something, and that deep state-controlled government comes down, and you lose your country and you lose your freedom. They did it over and over and over again, and I believe it's exactly what is happening here in the United States. How are we doing on the investigation into the deep state and all of the people that were responsible for the Russia collusion garbage and ratting out and finding these people that are working against freedom in America, in our own government?
Well, we're moving forward a little bit more slowly than I would like, Glenn, but it is moving forward, in part because we lived through 2+ years of the Mueller investigation, even though I think it's now clear that the FBI knew from the earliest days, even before Bob Mueller was appointed as a special counsel, that the Steele dossier was full of garbage, probably full of Russian intelligence disinformation,
sure.
And that there was no collusion. whatever efforts Russia undertook on its own. There was no collusion with the Trump campaign. I commend the Attorney General and the U.S. Attorney in Washington for dropping the charges against Mike Flynn. They shouldn't have been brought to begin with, and that was long overdue. We've seen other reports, for instance, from the Inspector General in the Department of Justice about how the senior FBI leaders abused their authority in 2016 and 2017. Of course, John Durham is continuing to investigate the entire origins of the Russia collusion hoax, and I expect that'll be announced well before the election. And of course, Lindsey Graham in the Senate has begun a series of hearings that will end up calling in some of the central players involved in those decisions, like Jim Comey and Andy McCabe, Peter Strzok, and Lisa Page. Now, nearly all of them MSNBC or CNN contributors.
Yeah. The president's poll numbers, depending on who you look at, and I don't believe them at this point, and I can't imagine America going for a group of people that are supporting what's happening on the streets. But, whatever. America is a different place now, I guess. But this is important for these things to be cleared up before the president leaves office. We would have really dangerous people coming in, and if the American people don't see some arrests and don't, we're not cleaning things up, I worry what's coming next.
Well, that's one reason why I'm confident, Glenn, that these investigations will reach their natural conclusion before January or even before the election. The Attorney General recognizes that this is a closely divided country when it comes to electoral politics. We had a split decision in 2018 with Democrats winning the House and Republicans winning the Senate. I think this will be a closely contested election as well. It's important, though, that electoral politics, whoever wins the election, not get in the way of uncovering the truth about what is perhaps the biggest political scandal in our country's history, which is the Obama administration's efforts to disrupt the peaceful transition of power and use the organs of law enforcement against its political opponents.
So, one last thing, because you were on the coronavirus early, and there's a lot of people now that look at what's happening with the medical community coming out and saying, well, racism is a much worse disease than coronavirus, so you can go protest. These mayors and these governors that were arresting people, that said that people who were protesting the shutdown were irresponsible, going to kill everybody's grandmother, they were anarchists, etc., etc. Those people are now marching in the streets. The coronavirus experts are really endorsing going ahead and rioting or at least marching in the streets. And I think there's a lot of people that say, wait a minute, we destroyed our economy. For what? Did you people even believe this ever?
Well, Glenn, I hope and I pray that we will not see a surge in coronavirus cases and ultimately deaths because of the large-scale protests and demonstrations over the last couple of weeks. We'll know in the weeks ahead. I hope that's not the case. And if it's not, then that might give us even more confidence to get the rest of our economy back up and open again. However, I think it's obvious that just de facto, the lockdowns are now in effect over. It's going to be very hard for any governor or mayor to tell his or her people, you've got to stay at home, you can't earn a living, you can't open your business, you can't take your kids to a park, you can't go worship in church, after they've seen these very same mayors and governors not just permit, but encourage and celebrate protests and demonstrations with people marching in the streets shoulder to shoulder by the thousands. I would also suspect that to the extent those governors and mayors try to enforce those lockdowns, against, say, churches holding services, that they're going to face lawsuits, and those lawsuits are apt to be successful. I mean, it can't be the case that we condone First Amendment activity by the thousands in our streets, but we prohibit First Amendment activity by the dozens in our churches.
Yep. Senator Tom Cotton, thanks for being on. My gosh, how you won't stand with Black Lives Matter just amazes me, and I appreciate it. Thank you so much for being on the program. All right, let me tell you about our commercial this half hour with our sponsor, the people that have made this half hour possible. It's Honey. If you are, if PayPal now is teaming up with Honey, so if you have a PayPal account, this is going to make it even easier when you're shopping online. You get to the checkout, you see the price, you click on the Honey app, and it just goes and it searches for the best discounts possible on whatever it is you're buying. It automatically applies that, and you save a buttload of money. They're not tracking you. They're not making money off of you. They get paid by the people who are selling the products. Joinhoney.com/Beck. It's really an easy way to save money. There's no reason not to do it. And now they've just teamed up with PayPal. So it installs in just seconds. It's free to use. It doesn't track you. It's Honey. Joinhoney.com/Beck. Joinhoney.com/Beck.
This is the Glenn Beck Program.
Tomorrow night on my Wednesday night special, you don't want to miss it. If you'd like to know who Black Lives Matter really, who are they? How did they form? What are they? Antifa? Who are they? The Revolutionary Abolitionist Movement? Who are they? We'll tell you who's behind these riots and give you the 101 on exactly what they believe. And when they say defund the police, what does that mean to them? More tomorrow on the Wednesday night special only on Blaze TV. All right, so I want to talk to you about Built Bar. Built Bar is this great protein bar. Look at me. You don't get a body like this, just by sitting around. Well, by not doing anything. I mean, you really have to work at having a body like this. And my wife, she works out. She doesn't have a body like mine. And she's been telling me about Built Bars for a long time. I crave a sweet at night before I go to bed. And she said, this is just like candy. And I'm like, no, it's not. It's a protein bar. It's going to taste awful. It's Built Bar. It is absolutely everything my wife told me it would be. I asked for this sponsor on the air because I just wanted to share it with you. BuiltBar.com. Use BuiltBar.com. Save $10. BuiltBar.com. Promo code Beck.
You're about to hear is the fusion of entertainment and enlightenment. This is the Glenn Beck Program.
Hello, America. It's another great day in God's country. No, and I actually mean that. It is a blessing to be alive today because we get to find out who we really are. Are we everything that everybody has always said, or are we actually the kind of Americans that just get the job done? They don't hate people, and we just keep rocking on. We'll delve into that a bit this hour. I want to share some real facts on what is actually happening on the ground with the police officers. Because tomorrow, I'm just going to do all police officers. I want to hear from you if you are in uniform, if you're going in, if your mayor, your city council is trashing you. I don't know why you still work. I really don't. We're going to do all police officers tomorrow, so we'll lead with the facts today. Also, what the hell is happening over in Europe? Why are people in Europe, in Italy, in England, why are they protesting police brutality here in America? I don't understand that unless it really doesn't have anything to do with that, and it has a lot to do with overthrowing capitalism and the Western way of life. We go overseas to London. Look out. We're talking to a very opinionated writer in 1 minute.
This is the Glenn Beck Program.
Oh my gosh. I could be on the wheel of termination today. We don't know who's going to lose their job today. Could be me, could be you. We don't know. Blinds.com. Blinds.com is the number one online retailer of custom window treatments in the world, and they would like to help turn your home into more of a sanctuary by giving you a chance to win a contact-free total bedroom makeover worth $2,000, plus a virtual session with an experienced interior designer whose work has been featured in Country Living magazine, Pop Sugar, and has inspired millions online. Blinds.com. Doing this contest for you right now, also making it really easy and very affordable to make your home even more beautiful. All you have to do for your chance to win, to transform your bedroom into the perfect staycation, is go to Blinds.com. They're the people that guarantee the perfect fit for your windows at Blinds.com. Go there now, enter for your chance to win total bedroom makeover worth over $2,000, and check out their special savings on top quality interior blinds, shades, shutters, and outdoor shades. No purchase is necessary. Rules and restrictions may apply. See Blinds.com for all details.
Tomorrow night, the looting.
Reaching the gate at the 3rd precinct.
Looters lit fires during another night of violent protest.
The violence. The riots. Was this all part of a bigger plan? Glenn exposes the dangerous groups used to carry it all out, who's pulling the strings, and how it could result in the destruction of America. Insurrection USA. Tomorrow, 9 p.m. Eastern. BlazeTV.com/Glenn.
Anaya Follerin Aman is a writer in the UK, freelance writer. She is also somebody who stood in December 2019, the UK general election, for the Brexit Party in Leeds Northeast. She is speaking out now in the UK, basically asking the same thing many of us are asking. Is this really about racism and police brutality, or is there something else going on? She was born in 96. Holy cow. She was born in 1996 in London. She is of Yoruba heritage. She's was raised in a British Nigerian single parent household. Welcome to the program. How are you?
Thank you for having me. I'm very, very good. Thank you.
So many people call you the Candace Owens of the UK. I've heard that bandied around. Tell me your take on what, I don't know if you take that as a good thing or a bad thing, but we mean it as a good thing. Tell me about what you're feeling.
I take it positively.
Good. On what's happening in Europe. They, in the UK, they've just defaced the guy who fought against fascism better than anybody else in the world, Winston Churchill. They just defaced a statue of Abraham Lincoln. What's going on in the UK?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, I want to say that I think a lot of people for the past kind of few months and even years in particular have been worried about kind of the rise of China and that what implications that has for kind of international politics. But I think that what we've seen in the last week, we can be in no doubt of American cultural hegemony and how kind of American racial culture wars has now been kind of exported globally. Now, you know, I love America. I think it's a fantastic country, but I have actually been surprised to see thousands and thousands of people in Britain, in central London, putting their hands up, saying, "Hands up, don't shoot," to one of the most demilitarized police forces in the world, which is the British police force.
They don't have guns. How can they shoot? They don't have guns.
Yeah, they don't have guns. So I think what we've seen is a kind of attempt to create this kind of homogenized narrative about what it means to be black in the world. I think, and it's been one that has been essentialized to be one of kind of racism, oppression, victimization, irrespective of the kind of nuances and complexities of specific countries. I think absolutely, you know, racism exists, that needs to be combated. But in response to the George Floyd killing, for the first time in, you know, I think years, there was unity across the political spectrum, pretty much internationally, saying that this was, you know, a wrong thing. And, you know, the man's now been charged, and, you know, people can debate about what charge that should be. But at the end of the day, that's on our way to justice. That's a very positive thing. And so what has now transpired to me is something very, very, very different. We are seeing what looks like to me a kind of concerted effort to paint Western society at large as this kind of bastion of evil and hate and kind of racism. And I think it's sending a really toxic and demoralizing message to a generation of young people who haven't had it so better in terms of, racial equality, progress. There's much more to be done, but the narrative that is being told is completely divorced from reality. And I think it's got much darker intentions and kind of consequences unless we seriously grapple with what is happening to our culture.
Can you tell me what you think? Because I agree with you, and everything that you're saying here leads me to the things that we have been investigating for a long time, at least on my program, and that is this concerted effort by a radical leftist group of organizations and people that want to tear down the Western world and capitalism. Do you believe that that's what you're seeing over in the UK as well?
No, absolutely, because, it is something that's not just sparked solely out of the protests. We've seen it in terms of the education system, even in the universities. I think there's a similar thing that's happened in America in terms of these kind of campus free speech wars. We've seen it with the gender debate, and also in the UK, we saw it up until the election, until Brexit, which is essentially overthrowing the democratic system in order to kind of push forward a certain agenda. And I don't want to make too many connections, but I do think it's all part of the same underlying ideology that has a deep, bitterful resentment kind of Western society and sees, many of these political upheavals as an opportunity to exploit it, to kind of push forward a very radical left agenda. And I think it's really worrying. I think, at least in the UK, we have a situation where kind of the Conservative Party won the election, and a lot of us thought that was a positive thing in terms of pushing back against this. But the left, I think, again, it's similar in America, have right now a monopoly on culture. They have very significant sways in terms of the media, and in terms of changing that narrative and reclaiming a kind of more positive and realistic representation of the West, and kind of speaking to the young people that this picture is not actually the reality, is something that is still, there's a lot more work to be done there. So it is really concerning.
So I've recently met the founders and the heads of an organization, Turning Point UK, and I've been really excited to see the ideas of freedom start to take root in a younger generation as well. But it's almost like it's a cute little effort overseas, because you don't have our Constitution and Bill of Rights, and quite honestly, we don't either right now. But so it's a different look at liberty, and it's kind of a hard sell in some ways. How are you seeing the pushback on this globalist, Marxist kind of ideology? Is there growing pushback on that at all?
Well, even in Britain, we don't obviously, as you mentioned, have a written constitution, but we have a really strong and rich tradition of liberty in terms of, John Stuart Mill and kind of the Bill of Rights and the Magna Carta. Right. There's a very rich and kind of amazing tradition there. And I think a lot of that, again, has kind of been brushed aside and downplayed in this swell of cultural self-loathing, which has really encapsulated many of the left in particular, but a lot in the West. But I think in terms of the pushback, I think it is something that's growing. So I'm part of an organisation in the UK called the Free Speech Union, and we've now been really proactive in terms of trying to defend people that are even facing losing their job and their positions to simple things that they've said. I mean, even recently in the UK, it's quite horrifying. A gentleman, a radio presenter, is being investigated for criticizing Black Lives Matter. So, it is a really, really serious thing. And obviously, there's a whole situation in terms of the New York Times in America over there. So the pushback is there, but it definitely needs to be much stronger, much more forthright. I mean, if we look at the lockdown, in Britain, I've been quite surprised at how there wasn't that much pushback in terms of the biggest peacetime removal of our liberties. And so I think that a lot of people have felt quite felt kind of exhausted by the constant barrage of negativity. But I think that what we've seen now, something feels different to me in the UK. You know, statues, as you mentioned, of Winston Churchill being brought down, historic cultural monuments being defamed, and, you know, violence against the police, and all of these really kind of significant things. I think a lot of people are now waking up and saying that we cannot let this go on, or this is really going to spiral into something much, much darker than it already is.
So how does the United States of America, and be honest, I'm not asking for a nice fluffy answer here. How does the United States of America look to those in Great Britain who may have looked on us favorably in the past? What does the average person think about what's happening over here?
I think the average person is probably sees a lot of parallels, but it depends on the perspective. So I think what I found is that a lot of people that were in favour of Brexit, which was actually obviously the majority of the country in the Democratic vote, had a lot of sympathies with Trump, not necessarily in terms of, you know, the particular policies he was advocating, but in terms of what he represented in regards to a kind of figure that is taking on the establishment, taking on these kinds of institutions that have been so entrenched, but not really dealing with the kind of issues that are plaguing so many people. And so I think a lot of people in Britain that supported Brexit have been very sympathetic towards that and do see parallels in terms of the way in which, you know, for example, in America, particularly the kind of radical left weaponized impeachment to try and, in some ways, you know, subvert democracy, the way that many people, particularly on the radical left in America, were the most fervent in regards to the lockdown and things like that. So I think there are quite similar parallels. But I think similar with here, it really depends on who you speak to. And I think, unfortunately, particularly the mainstream media in the UK don't always paint America with the most positive perception. But I think there's a great number of people that do see through it and kind of see that a lot of the time the way that the media represent political events in America and also in Britain is not actually the full scope of what is happening.
I will tell you that I think we look at Great Britain, many of us look at Great Britain in the same exact way. We while we didn't understand all the ins and outs of Brexit, we were with you because it seemed as though you were experiencing the same thing with a government that had just become abusive to the people. It doesn't matter what we say. They just do whatever they want anyway. It's that deep state is what is being called over here. And it's happening all over the Western world, and it's really got to stop. It's got to stop. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, well, there's an election obviously coming up in November, and there was in America, and obviously in Britain there was in December. So I think it's definitely through democracy and through arguments that we need to push back and not succumb to the kind of tactics of the radical left.
So great talking to you. All the best of luck over in London, and stay free. God bless.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You bet. I want to talk to you about selling your house and getting the right real estate agent, the best person for the job. I don't know how to find a real estate agent, or I didn't used to know how to find a real estate agent. I mean, do we find the one that, has the most bus boards? What are you looking for? What are the qualifications? What are the things that make them great? Well, there's actually a pretty good list, and we developed it after talking to many of the 500 best real estate agents in the country. I was doing some work with them, and just over time of working with them and talking to them, I learned there is a pattern that you can find. So we've developed this list, and it's a way for us to look for what we believe are the best real estate agents in your area. Now, I want you to do your own homework. Never take my word for it, but these are the real estate agents that I trust. And I think they're going to do really well by you. Try them. Again, do your own homework. You should interview several people. This is the biggest investment of your life, but you want your home sold fast, on time, for the most amount of money, and you want to find the right home in a new location, the right neighborhood, and the right amount of money. please. It's a free service to you. Try realestateagentsitrust.com. Find the real estate agent in your area with a track record we believe is the best in your area. It's realestateagentsitrust.com. Realestateagentsitrust.com. 10 seconds, station ID. From the Standing Rock Ranch, welcome. This is the Glenn Beck program. I want to share with you just for a second why I said at the beginning of the hour, this is a great time to be alive. I don't want you to be discouraged. I think these people are burning themselves out. I think they know the end is near. I think they know that the Justice Department is on them. They're going to be exposed. They thought that they would be protected by the deep state, and indeed, if we have a change in president and Senate, if God forbid, I can't imagine. Stu, help me. Mm-hmm. In what world does America vote for people who are standing with the protesters and the riots? Help me out on that. I can't imagine it.
The riots are obviously a further, path. I mean, you're down that road a little bit further. I mean, the protesters, I think a lot of people will get on. I mean, the idea of that Black Lives Matter means what their statement of values means to most people, I think is not accurate, right? Most people just say, well,
no, it's not.
I want to be nice to black people too. Why wouldn't I join these rallies? A lot of it is that, of course. But, I think the only world where this happens is, we are looking at an economy that is bouncing back, hopefully a little bit. How much does it bounce back? People generally, I think Trump is such a dominant figure in this country that they are going to vote on whether they like Trump or not. Do they think he's doing a good job? Do they think their world is getting better? If, there was 40 million people who lost their job as far as the coronavirus situation goes, if 30 million of them have their jobs back and we're trending in the right direction, he's got a great chance. But I don't know. I mean, I don't know that they'll make the distinctions. I mean, Biden has come out, by the way, and said, for what it's worth, that he doesn't want to defund the police. Whatever that means, whether you believe him or not, doesn't matter.
Yeah, whatever. I think Kamala Harris is going to be his vice presidential nominee, too.
That's such a weird pick in the middle of this, though.
Law and order. I don't know.
Yeah, but that's exactly the problem, right? Like the left is going crazy. They want to defund the police. One of the big reasons Kamala Harris didn't win the nomination is because she was a prosecutor, and they're going to put her on the ticket. Like, that's really going to piss off the left.
Because you're going to have somebody that is going to look tough on crime. You cannot, they will lose hand over fist if they just placate this stuff and they're all for defunding the cops and everything else. They have to have a tough person, and it's not Biden. Biden doesn't even know what he's talking about half the time.
No, I would tend to agree with you on that. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yesterday, did you see the deal yesterday where he was reading off of a card in his lap? And he just kept repeating it over and over again. Did you see that?
I didn't see that.
Let's see if we can find that and play it. It's incredible, Stu. The guy has absolutely no idea what he's talking about. But anyway, the reason why I say it's a good time to be alive is in their arrogance, they will destroy themselves. And if Donald Trump is cleaning out the deep state, if that does happen, we're going to win. We're going to win. Good will triumph over evil, and you just have to stay calm, rational, but you have to steel your spine. You don't bow down to this. Don't bow down. Don't cower. You know who you are. You know what's right and wrong. Do not go over the cliff with the rest of humanity. And we make it. We make it. More in a minute.
This is the Glenn Beck program.
Oh, yeah, dog. Let me tell you about Relief Factor. If you have pain that just won't go away, wow, I wonder if I could just rub this stuff all over the media and they would go away. Relief Factor. It takes care of the things that just are not bothersome or don't just hurt, but interfere with your life. Do you make decisions based on how you feel your pain? Let's see if we can reduce that and get that out of your life so you can actually go live your life. Don't give up. Try Relief Factor. Give it a try for 3-week quick start. It's a 3-week supply. It's less than $20, and you could legitimately get your life back. It works for about 70% of the people. They try it, and they go on to order more month after month. So try it. It's not a drug. I want you to try it for 3 weeks. See if you can get your life back. Get out of pain. ReliefFactor.com or call 800-500-8384. 800-500-8384. It's ReliefFactor.com.
You can subscribe to Blaze TV at blazetv.com/Glenn. Use the promo code Glenn and save $10.
Welcome to the Glenn Beck program. There are a lot of quote-unquote facts that are going around. Sarah, do we happen to have any of the audio from the New York Times Daily today? Go ahead and play this. Let's see which cut this is. Go ahead.
So, John, what do these concepts, defund, dismantle, abolish the police, what exactly do they mean?
To defund, when activists say that, what they mean is taking money away from the police department's budget and redirect it toward other things, whether that be social services agencies, maybe mental health agencies that can do functions that police are often called on to do. Mm-hmm. But if you fully defund it, you can get to a space where the police department is abolished. And so essentially what that means is that there is no more police department as we know it. You don't call these men and women in blue shirts to come racing to your door with their guns in hand. It means that they have to figure out some other form of providing that public safety, and the police department would not be that form.
And where do these concepts come from?
Well, at their core, they come from...
Stop. I can't take it anymore. Listen to this. I mean, listen to the New York Times taking this seriously. Taking something that we have had since the beginning of time, police, and just throwing it out and saying, well, we're going to come up with something different. Well, I'd kind of like to know what, but we could all hope for change. We've done it before, and didn't that work out well for us? The thing that this is all based on is how bad the cops are and how it's not getting any better, and they are killing kids and killing black people just on the side of the road at a record pace. That's what you have to believe. Raphael Mangual is with us now. He is a fellow at the Manhattan Institute and contributing editor of the City Journal. He says the toxic narrative about the police is absolutely wrong. Welcome, sir. How are you?
I'm doing very well, Glenn. How are you?
I'm good. I'm going to play devil's advocate, and I'm going to bring Stu in for this too. And we want to push you on the stats, because we have heard all of these press reports and all of these people saying how bad it is. So you go ahead and fill our head with these lies. How bad is it out there?
Well, it is not anywhere close to what the activists say we're dealing with. And that's the most important takeaway here. Okay. I think, like any other human endeavor, policing is perfect, right? Police are human. They make mistakes. Sometimes those mistakes result in death, and some of those deaths reflect not just negligence, but sometimes even malevolence, right? There is such thing as a bad cop. There is such thing as evil that makes its way onto a police force. The question is how big? What is the scope of this problem? And, the reality is that it is a problem that is far overblown compared to the rhetoric. I mean, consider just fatal encounters, for example, right? The Washington Post documented just over 1,000 shootings last year and 992 shootings in 2018. So that number's remained pretty steady. That year, police in general across the whole country fired their guns just over 3,000 times in 2018. Now, this sounds like a lot, right? There's multiple shootings a day involving police. But in a country of 330 million people with a police force of nearly 700,000 officers in full-time roles, not including reserve officers or part-time roles, that is an incredibly low amount, especially when you consider also that they make more than 10 million arrests in a given year, have almost 100 million police citizen contacts, right? So when we look at the full scope of the volume of police activity, what we see is that deadly encounters represent an infinitesimally small slice of an exceptionally large pie, right? At most, if you're looking at 10.3 million arrests, 0.003% of arrests result in the use of deadly force. That is not evidence of a pandemic of police violence. That is not evidence of a police force out of control. And the case does not get any stronger when you look at non-fatal uses of force. Right. One of the best studies I've seen on this is a study that was published in the Journal of Trauma and Acute Care Surgery. It looked at over 1 million calls for service across 3 mid-sized police departments, one in North Carolina, one in Louisiana, and one in Arizona. Those calls for service resulted in over 114,000 arrests. And in less than 1% of all those arrests was physical force used. And in 98% of the cases in which physical force was used, there was no discernible injury to the suspect whatsoever. There was only one instance in those 114,000 arrests of a fatal police shooting. Right? Again, is some subset of that, does some subset of that reflect error? Does some subset of that use of force reflect malevolence? Perhaps. But the idea that this is that illegal police force can characterize the institution of policing as opposed to just reflecting the individual actions of what amount to statistically few bad apples, that is not a claim that can be sustained.
Okay, so the Washington Post has said protests spread over police shootings. Police promise reforms. Every year they still shoot and kill nearly 1,000 people. Police since 2015 have shot and killed 5,400 people. I mean, your stats are great, but what about the fact that this has been going over for decades, and they're killing blacks at a much higher rate than they're killing whites?
Right. Well, I'm gonna start at the beginning of that question. Right. One of the big flaws that the Washington Post suffers from in making that kind of claim is that they're basing it on their own data set, which only goes back to 2015. Right. That is not a long period of time. Right? The fact of the matter is, yes, we have had essentially steady rates of police shootings in 2015, but that does not mean that we have not had any progress on this front. Take, for example, some of the data out of the New York City Police Department. In 1971, when that department started to keep track, New York City police fired their guns 810 times. They wounded 221 people and killed 93 that year. In 2016, those numbers were down to just 72, 23, and 9, respectively. That is an enormous amount of progress that may not be captured in that short 5-year window. Right? One of my biggest pet peeves about this debate is that what the rhetoric has done it has essentially positioned us to be underwhelmed by even meaningful progress. Because the fact of the matter is again, police are not perfect, but there isn't a whole lot of room for improvement when it comes to deadly force, simply because of the fact that it is such a rare occurrence. Now, as for the fact that black Americans are disproportionately represented in police shooting numbers, that's true if you use their basis, if you use the denominator, which is their proportion of the population that they make up. But that, to me, is the wrong denominator. What we should be looking at are rates of violent crime. And we know, for example, that black Americans, despite constituting just 13% of the population, are responsible for more than 50% of all murders in the United States. And when you consider the fact that most of those murders, almost all of them, are committed by men, you get a stat that looks more like about 7% of the population being responsible for nearly 50% of all those homicides. It's that disproportionality that informs the disproportionate statistics that we see in police shootings and other uses of force. Right? We cannot work around the reality that black men have a homicide commission rate that is about 8 times that of their white counterparts. That is going to be reflected in this data, right? And I would ask any reasonable person to really just reflect on the following question, which is that, do you honestly believe that police resources should be equally distributed across the United States without regard to crime rates? I don't think any reasonable person would answer that question in the affirmative. And so if you believe that police resource deployment should reflect varying rates of violent crime, then it stands to reason that deployment of resources is going to result in more contacts that police are going to have with black Americans simply by virtue of the racial disparities that we see in crime victimization and commission numbers. Again, on the victimization, everyone likes to focus on the enforcement disparities, but on the victimization disparities, a black American is 6 times more likely to be the victim of a homicide than a white American. No one talks about that disparity. To me, that is one of the most important disparities that our country needs to address. And police have been at the forefront of addressing that disparity for decades on end. And to lose sight of that, I think really truly reflects the fever pitch that we've reached in this debate, and I think truly reflects the major flaw in the left's argument on this topic.
Raphael, I'm wondering if you could address one thing that is brought up a lot, which is the idea that there's been several studies that have showed that white police officers are equal or, in some cases, less likely to use force against black citizens when it comes to in a comparative way. So the idea that this is sort of fueled by racism, is there anything to prove that out?
No, other than the facial disparities that people harp on, right? And that's the thing. Disparities on their own don't show intent, and intent is at the core of a claim of racism. Right. And we have, as you mentioned, really fantastic econometric studies that have looked at these questions very deeply. Roland Fryer of Harvard University has done probably the best one. And what he found is that there is no evidence of racial animus driving deadly police force. And that makes sense because police deadly force is often used in situations that are extremely intense and that unfold within seconds. Police don't have the time to consider someone's race in deciding whether, to fire their weapons. I mean, one example of this is the shooting of Stephon Clark out in Sacramento almost 2 years ago. This was a case of a guy who was shot holding just a cell phone that was apparently mistaken for a gun. It was pitch black when police encountered him. He took off as soon as they approached him. They chased him into a backyard, and thankfully the video captures the police's actions in this. You see them run up the driveway, and as they break the threshold of the back of the house and turn into the backyard to chase the suspect, you see that the lead officer stops short, pulls his partner back behind cover, and then they fire their weapons from cover. That is not the action of an officer who is trying to murder someone he knows to be unarmed. That is the action of someone who has clearly made a mistake because of the darkness. And the idea that in those intense moments where someone believed that their life was in danger, they were calculating whether they were going to try and save their own lives based on the race of the suspect really just doesn't have any basis in the data, in the studies that we've seen, or in reality.
All right, so I'm going to run out of time. I've only got about a minute left. What about things like, chokeholds and resisting arrest? And I mean, if he wouldn't have died, police we wouldn't know about this. But the abuse would have still gone on. Are there any stats on any of these things? Because the Washington Post says there's no stats on them.
Well, no, that's not entirely true, right? The Bureau of Justice Statistics does do surveys of citizens who have had police encounters. And in those surveys, they asked citizens whether they were, for example, the victims of force that they felt to be excessive. And we see that only about 8% of those citizens who encounter, and this is encompassing more than 50,000 contacts, only about 8% of citizens express any kind of displeasure with their police interactions, and only a subset of that 8% are based on impressions of excessive force. which again have to be taken with a grain of salt because most people are not going to enjoy being on the enforcement end of a police encounter, and oftentimes their impressions of what's legal and what's not are erroneous. And so, I think that what we saw in the George Floyd video does reflect misconduct. I do think it happens. I don't think police are perfect, but to say that kind of misconduct characterizes the institution as a whole, I think is just a cry too far.
Rafael Mangual, thank you so much. He's a fellow at the Manhattan Institute, contributing editor for the City Journal. Thanks for the information. On tomorrow's program, if you are a police officer, we want to hear from you from all over the country. And we want to hear from the leadership of the police officers. I don't know how you guys are still going to work every day in some of these cities. But God bless you. Thank you for the work that you do. That'll be on tomorrow's radio program, tomorrow night's television program. Who really is behind this? Who, you say you stand with Black Lives Matter. Really? Mitt Romney, do you know who they are? We'll give you all of the details on that on tomorrow night's television broadcast, only on Blaze TV. All right. I want to talk to you about Patriot Mobile. Patriot Mobile is trying to give you the best rate that you can possibly get on your phone service. Starting at $25, you can customize your own family plan. It's a U.S.-based team. The Patriot Mobile was started by a group of Special Forces veterans, and they share your values. They never charge you hidden fees, unlike Big Mobile. Look at your phone bill sometime. They're not going to send your hard-earned money to Planned Parenthood or other leftist causes, which a lot of these phone companies do. So do business with somebody who shares your values and is fighting for the same things that you are. It makes a difference. You're going to get free activation and a free gift with the offer code Beck when you call 872-PATRIOT. Switch now. They make it really easy to switch. 972-PATRIOT or visit patriotmobile.com/Beck. Get your customized family plan starting at just $25. 972-PATRIOT. 972-PATRIOT or patriotmobile.com/Beck.
You're listening to Glenn Beck.
Hey, there's some good news today from the stock market. The S&P 500 erased its loss for the year as stocks rallied on the reopening optimism. Looks like the stock market's going to just rally and rally and rally, which totally makes sense. Because no companies are having problems. No companies are having to shut stores. We're at complete rest as a nation. The elections are up in the air. You don't know what's coming next. Why wouldn't the stock market just rally? It's insane. It's more insane than the news you read every day. This is completely propped up by the Fed. Go ahead. Have a great party and drink the punch. But I warn you, it's going to come down. It must. This is the Fed propping it up.
This is the Glenn Beck Program.